Let me say something that's going to piss a lot of people off. Right out the gate, I'm just going to say it. MAGA has shown me one thing this past week, that they are extremely comfortable with child predators, as long as those predators are politically inconvenient to talk about for their side of the party. And, you know, I don't say that lightly. I say it because I'm watching people who call themselves conservatives, who claim Christian values, bend themselves into moral pretzels to avoid accountability and to defend these evil acts. And maybe not defending outright, but complicity, being complicit to it, is the same. This is the same crowd that screams protect the children. You remember that when that movie came out and everybody was like, oh man, I think his name's Cavell was in it. The movie name doesn't dawn on me at the moment, but protect the children, you know, this and that. Suddenly they want us to move on from this. You keep hearing this line get repeated like some kind of cult chant. This is the most transparent administration in history. Oh, really? Because if it was so transparent, why did it take Thomas Massie dragging Congress into a public fight to force the Epstein files out? Why wasn't it volunteered? It was screamed about for ages by this party, all the Epstein files, Democrats covering it up. Why wasn't this demanded at day one? Why was it called a hoax? Why was Massie attacked publicly by Trump himself? And why is he still being attacked today? I don't know if you guys saw this. People are saying that Thomas Massie became a liberal because this new wife, blessed be their marriage, is supposedly a radical left flamethrower. This new union all went so fast that maybe he didn't know what he was getting into. Nevertheless, he is an absolutely terrible and unreliable Republican, perhaps a rhino, or maybe even worse. A former war hero, Ed Gallagher, is running against Massie. He is a high-quality individual, and there's no candidate for Congress that would be better. He is running because he realizes Thomas Massie has been totally disloyal to the President of the United States and the Republican Party. He never votes for us. He always goes with the Democrats. Thomas Massie is a complete and total disaster. We must make sure he loses big. And I would say that anyone that goes against someone because they want a transparency for these files is a massive problem. There are super PACs being funded by Trump's friends against him, millions of dollars. Marjorie Taylor Greene was attacked. Lauren Boebert, people that wanted the transparency. Attacking people that are asking the questions doesn't look like transparency. It looks more like containment. Okay. And this is the part nobody wants to touch. If you actually wanted justice, real justice, you wouldn't be saying today that we need to move past the Epstein files, move past them, he says. After this much evidence, after this many names, after this many missing tapes and redactions, sealed pages, how do you uncover something so dark and your instinct immediately is closure, not prosecution? I'm going to play the clip in a moment, but and I want you to really listen to it. I'm not as a partisan, not as a cheerleader, but as a human being. Because once you hear it, I want you to ask yourself a question. When did conservatives become comfortable with this level of evil as long as it's politically inconvenient to pursue? When did law and order turn into, hey man, let's not rock the boat, because if you do, you're a liberal. If you ask questions about the child predators, you're a liberal. That's what it's become. I see that getting smeared. Every conservative that I know that is asking questions are being called a liberal because they want to bring child predators to justice. When did drain the swamp become don't ask too many questions? Sounds pretty tyrannical to me. And let me be clear about this. This is not a conservative value. It's definitely not a Christian value. Christianity doesn't teach move on. when children are abused. It teaches judgment, exposure, and consequences. Christ flipped tables for less. What you're seeing right now isn't conservatism, it's cult behavior, where loyalty to a man outweighs loyalty to the truth, where questioning power is treated as betrayal, when accountability is framed as an attack. That's not strength, man. That's rot. That's rot deep, right? And let's say there's, in the files, there's accusations about Trump. Let's say they're not true. Let's just say they're not true. Maybe they are, maybe they're not. But whatever happening, whether it's protecting his donors, our greatest ally, or himself, you're being complicit, which means in dummy terms, you're okay with it. And I've seen, again, this chatter online defending accusations saying the Democrats had these files for years. They could have put it in there about Trump. Don't you think that if they would have put that in there about him, they would have took the Clinton stuff out and destroyed it? Wouldn't you think that? Or the others, the other friends of theirs. Let's look at reality for a second, man. The past 60 days, the DOJ has been redacting, and not just victims, but powerful people. Okay. Now let me play the clip.
Maybe get onto something else.
Well, what would you say to people
like
who feel like they haven't gotten
healthcare
justice, Mr. President?
Something that people care about. Yeah, what did you say? Go ahead.
What would you say to the survivors who feel like they haven't gotten justice?
You are the worst reporter. No wonder CNN has no ratings because of people like you. You know, she's a young woman. I don't think I've ever seen you smile. I've known you for 10 years. I don't think I've ever seen a smile on your face.
I'm asking you about survivors.
You know why?
You
You know why you're not smiling? Because you know you're not telling the truth. And you're a very dishonest organization, and they should be ashamed of you.
These are survivors of a sexual abuse.
You know, when Epstein was alive, nobody cared about him. When he's dead, they care about him. But it's really a Democrat problem. It's not a Republican, it's a Democrat problem. The only problem Republicans have is that we have to get back to, number one, running our country, and then number two, very importantly, letting the public know what a great job we're doing. We have the greatest economy in the history of the world.
You talked about Democrats who were in there. Elon Musk was also in there, and so was your Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick and correspondence that he had with him. Did you read those new files that were published by the Department of Justice?
I didn't. I have a lot of things I'm doing, you know, a lot of things I'm doing. I don't know. You mentioned two names. I'm sure they're fine. I'm sure they're fine. Otherwise, it would have been major headlines.
And Howard Lutnick is his right-hand man. He's the guy that you always see beside him. He was Jeffrey's neighbor. And he actually hung out with Jeffrey after the fact of him being convicted. He lied about it in an interview, saying that it was 2005 was like the last time he had seen him, but it was untrue. It was 2012 he saw him again. So not only is people in, you know, that are right there in the White House working, that are complicit and involved in this, it's very damaging. The other problem I have today is Todd Blanche was asked, Assistant Attorney General, was asked, would there be prosecutions coming from this? And listen to what this man has to say.
Individuals who partied with Epstein and engaged in, relations with minors will be prosecuted.
Well,
Any
look,
chance?
I'll never say no, and we will always investigate any evidence of misconduct. But as you know, it is not a crime to party with Mr. Epstein, and so as horrible as it's not a crime to email with.
I mean, it's not, but at least bring him in for questioning, right? When you said, let's get to the bottom of this, maybe?
Mr. Epstein, and some of these men may have done horrible things, and if we have evidence.
Well, we know that a lot of people did horrible things. There's lots of sworn statements, evidence, troves of it.
That allows us to prosecute them, you better believe we will. But it's also the kind of thing that the American people need to understand, that it isn't a crime to party with Mr. Epstein. It isn't a crime to have
Didn't look like that's all that was going on some of those photos. I mean, if the photos could speak, some of them look pretty bad.
That's right. And unfortunately, photos can't speak. And so we need witnesses.
So, yeah, crazy, right? Now, on that same note, we know that people were involved. Bill Gates has been heavily involved with Trump. He's funding the ballroom. They're making some kind of plan for some kind of new vaccines. There's lots of dirt on him, even after the fact. his wife was asked today about it, and I agree with her. Need to be brought in for questioning.
So for me, it's personally hard whenever those details come up, right? Because brings back memories of some very, very painful times in my marriage, but I have moved on from that. I purposely pushed it away and I moved on. I'm in a really unexpected, beautiful place in my life. So whatever questions remain there of what I can't even begin to know all of it, those questions are for those people and for even my ex-husband. They need to answer to those things. No.
So I do know that they're finally getting the Clintons up there for questioning. They're going to hold them in contempt. But is anything really going to happen? Because nothing really ever does. The economy is the greatest it's ever been, which I don't know if I believe that, at least not in the real world. But apparently it's for the same people that are in the files, all the wealthy billionaires. They're doing great. But I'm going to touch on that actually later in the week. If the wool hasn't been pulled from your eyes yet, I don't know what more I can tell you. But I want to ground this in reality for a second. Jeffrey did not build this operation alone. Okay, he did not build this operation. You can't think this dude just stumbled upon coming from being a nobody and materialized this out of thin air. And he would not have survived this long without protection. Now, he got his beginnings with a guy named Lex Wessner, okay, and then Alan Dershowitz. These guys have ties to our greatest ally, if you didn't know. So you have to question, who did he work for? And we're going to kind of get into that in a moment, but because he pretty much spells it out, who he works for. Again, he didn't survive as long as he did without protection. That is not speculation, because that is how power works. People like Jeffrey aren't the architects. They're nodes. And nodes exist to connect powerful people while absorbing risk. Who did he work for? Or did he work for multiple people? He stated once that he worked for the Rothschilds. Okay. And let me see if I can find the document here. Which one it is. To Peter Thiel. He says, as you probably know, I represent the Rothschilds. The Rothschilds, if you don't know, who Bill Cooper talked about tremendously in his book, Behold the Pale Horse. I would definitely encourage you to read this book. But the Bilderbergs, and so they're also part of the greatest ally. And I did a deep dive about how the Rothschilds created the form of Christianity here in America, which is starkly different than the rest of the world, because they said that we need to essentially worship our chosen ally, with a paraphrasing a verse that was spoken to Abraham. But I did a video not too long back about this, and I can put that at the end of this video. But he makes these kind of claims, and you saw him talking to Peter Thiel. Well, he also states here, I believe it is, that Alan Dershowitz and Jared Kushner, okay, you know who Jared Kushner is, and he talked to this is a document for the FBI, talking about that essentially they were recruited. And you have to wonder, because Jared is handling most of the stuff in the Middle East. Okay. Pretty crazy. He's going to Iran this week. He also converted Donald Trump's daughter. And here you see he has a friend of a friend who says, I have friends with MI6 and Mossad willing to help identify stolen assets and get them recovered from Libya. Strange, all strange. So personally, I believe he worked for multiple groups of people. Now, there's been some propaganda online that's saying that he worked for Putin. I don't believe that at all. There's literally nothing really in the files linking him to Putin. I'm not saying he didn't have contact with him, but I don't see the linkage there. But I do see the linkage to our greatest ally and the key players. Rothschilds were helping in development of our greatest ally. Okay, so we have to understand that this family's been around for centuries, and they have their own intelligence organization inside that family, okay, because, you know, they're pretty much control many things behind. I mean, if you read the Behold the Pale Horse, you understand that Bilderberg Group, Rothschilds, and these people rule the world, okay? So we have essentially another FBI document that I showed the other day that stated that our president currently is being ran as a puppet by our greatest ally. And it's evident. You see the billions upon billions of dollars getting spent over there, okay? Now, you have to ask yourself this, is that how does a man with no formal financial pedigree end up managing billions for elites? How does a man charged with trafficking minors receive a plea deal that effectively ends his exposure? How does a convicted offender continue traveling, hosting powerful figures, and expanding influence? And how does the same man die in federal custody with broken cameras, missing footage, sleeping guards, and no one is ever held criminally accountable? It's not negligence. That's system failure at its best and system protection at its worst. Even Crash Dummy Patel was asked today about it. Listen.
Told me when we last talked, this is 8 months ago when we did an interview at the FBI in Quantico, that you were convinced that Epstein killed himself in jail. Today, 8 months after that, are you still convinced?
Yes.
100%.
Yes, sir.
Quick, right? Now, it's crazy. Going back to the Rothschilds for a moment, Rothschilds paid Epstein $25 million in 2015 via his company for risk analysis and algorithms, or was it for blackmail material? You have to ask yourself, really. We look at this here, it just says outright in this email, subject Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey, I suspect Robert, Ghislaine, and Jeffrey were all Mossad agents trying to blackmail leaders in the political and financial world. Sounds pretty convincing, right? The other thing, I just want to touch on this for a moment, is that there was a lot of added filler into these millions of files here. One was Dan Bilzerian, who is a critic of our greatest ally and president currently, and Post Malone here with redactions on it. And the strangest thing is why this photo is apparently from 2018. Why it made it into the files makes zero sense. But Dan posted the real picture back in 2018, and he even commented on this today, stating these women are in their 30s, and he has no idea why they're in the file. So we have the FBI adding filler content to the files, just so people spend time wasting their time. Okay. Strange. But really, you have to ask yourself, why the cover up, man? We were told that the surveillance footage was corrupted, that the transfers failed, logs were incomplete, tapes were missing, hundreds of thousands of pages remain sealed under privilege. Transparency doesn't look like that. That looks like damage control. Now, last year I did a video. It called Zero Traction because people were not interested in it. Because I didn't, maybe it was like a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago. A lot of people say, man, you didn't care about Jeffrey. I've cared about Jeffrey since he vanished. Okay. I did this video about this 4chan post. Now, this is where things get uncomfortable, because not what was said, but because how the government responded. Okay. Shortly before Jeffrey's reported death, an anonymous post appeared online. And I showed this post back then, but nobody cared. Not just online. Okay. Didn't really reach media traction or anything, but the poster claimed firsthand knowledge of unusual prison activity in the early morning hours before the official death announcement of Jeffrey. Now, what matters is what happened next, though. Okay. And he's not saying anything after this. Please do not try to dox me. But late last night around 04:15, they took him to medical in a wheelchair, front cuffed, but not one triage nurse says they spoke to him. Next thing we know, a trip van shows up. We do not do releases on the weekends unless a judge orders it. The next thing I know, he's put in a single man cell and takes himself out. here's the thing. The trip van did not sign in, and we did not have a record. The plate number and a guy in a green dress military outfit was in the back of the van, according to the tower guy who let him through the gate. You guys, I'm shaking right now, but I think they switched him out. That post came out hours after the fact. Okay. Now, the government response after that was the day after the U.S. Attorney's Office opened a grand jury proceeding. Okay. The next day, subpoenas were issued for Apple, AT&T, Citibank, and 4chan. The stated goal was not media control, but it was to identify the poster because the claim appeared to come from someone with insider knowledge of the prison operations. That is not how authorities respond to random internet nonsense. That is how they respond when a claim is specific, time-bound, and operational. So you got to ask yourself, right? We have people online claiming again that maybe they saw him alive, like in this photo here. Okay. Right? Then we have the old nose. Now, that doesn't look right, does it? Doesn't look right at all. A lot of people comment on that even after the fact, though. But even if the story is false, it raises a serious question. Why did the government treat it as serious enough to convene a grand jury and subpoena telecoms, tech companies, and financial institutions? Governments do not burn that kind of capital chasing fan fiction, guys. They do it when operational credibility is possible. Now, this is why I keep saying maybe he's alive, because it makes sense. A lot of powerful people. Crash Patel's quick to say, yep. Dan Bongino was quick to say, yep. I've seen the files. Well, I've seen them too, and I don't see nothing about that in there that changes my mind. Okay. But the biggest factor to this is that if he's alive, the system still failed. If he's dead, the system still failed. Either way, evidence vanished, accountability just completely stopped, other than Ghislaine, that trafficked to no one, and justice ended. So really arguing about the pulse of him being alive or not is not the real issue. Why was this case sealed instead of expanded? Okay. Well, let's go back for a moment, though, because who he could work for. Could work for a lot of people. But again, when we're talking about the elites of this country, especially with the technocracy coming into play with Peter Thiel and Palantir, there was a voice recording from a phone call with Yuhad Barak. Let's get it up.
He thought there was
So he was leaving government office in Israel. He turned to Jeffrey Epstein for guidance. He told him he needed to look to Peter Thiel, his company called Palantir. Listen to this, came from the latest DOJ release.
2 cyber companies. Look out, and even though I know Peter, I've never met Peter Thiel.
Now, they do come to meet each other, but this is before they met. And I want to say this, that Peter Thiel is a massive donor to Trump. He helped J.D. Vance get elected and become the vice president as well.
Everybody says he sort of jumps around and acts sort of strange, like he's on drugs.
Smoking, yeah.
Yeah.
He looks under drugs.
However, he has a company called Palantir. P-A-L-L-E-N-T-I.
He can't even spell Palantir. Do you really think this guy amassed millions by himself?
Palantir is Peter Thiel's company. And look out.
Palantir, P-A-L-A-N-T-I-E-R?
Yes.
How you write Thiel? T-H-I-E-L-L-Y?
T-H-I-E-L.
Yeah. L-L-Y.
No. T-H-I-E-L-L.
I mean, they're struggling with the spelling.
Okay.
So he thought that Peter would put you on the board of Palantir. Peter Thiel is one of the best. I've never met him. He's going to come here next week. I wanted to talk to him after I talked to you.
Okay.
He and Andreessen, it's called Andreessen Horowitz. Andreessen Horowitz, that's what they pay Larry $1 million a year. Just to advise
And
them.
we are
Larry Summers.
and
ANDREESSON, Andreessen, and Horowitz.
Howard.
HORO, Horowitz. Horowitz.
Horowitz.
Yes.
What they are? It's a lobbyist. What they are doing?
They are the biggest venture capital people in Silicon Valley.
What, bigger than Sequoia or Kleiner
These are
Perkins?
these are the new Kleiner Perkins. Everybody, these are the smart boys.
Yeah.
So those two companies right away, in terms of now, in the next 3 weeks, if you're going to leave.
And guess what Palantir is doing now? They're embedded in our Pentagon. They're embedded with ICE. They're running basically police state surveillance. And welcome to the new normal. It's crazy. You know, and Thomas Massey, again, is being attacked tremendously. And he was asked about whenever he spoke to Kash Patel about it. And Kash Patel said something very insane to me. Like, if we're talking about draining the swamp, listen to him.
Patel here just recently, the day before he had testified to the Senate that Epstein, even though there are 1,000 victims, that Epstein was the only perpetrator.
Correct.
And so the next day he came to House Judiciary and I said, well, the victims, which we prefer to call survivors, the ones who are still alive, the survivors tell me that you guys have at least 20 names. And I don't have I told him one of the names, Jess Staley,
right,
who's the CEO. I said, but there's 19 other names, 6 of them are billionaires. One's a movie producer. Like, we're not just making these up. You can go find these people in your files. And have you seen anything in your files? No. Well, I said, what about the 302 form, FD 302, which you've already referenced? Because the survivors know that the FBI memorializes these interviews in these 302 forms. And so, have you looked at the 302 forms? And he said, no.
Right.
And I said, well, how can you testify that there's nobody that's done any crimes or any reasonable leads to follow? And he said, well, I trust the people that work for me. Well, that's a problem. If we trusted the people that were working there, Joe Biden would still be president, right? Or Kamala Harris. Donald Trump was elected and then got a new FBI director so that he could go back and check the homework.
Bingo. Why would you trust the deep state? The deep state are embedded in the FBI. Why would you? It doesn't make sense, guys. It doesn't make sense. And listen, you don't call yourself conservative while protecting predators through silence, by moving on. You don't get to invoke Christianity while asking people to forget about abused children. You don't get to chant law and order while demanding amnesia the moment power is implicated. I've seen all kinds of defense for the most dumbest of things the past few weeks. However, one of the biggest disgraces black eyes our country in the history is just, let's walk away from it. Especially you've seen all this information and you're just that desensitized to it that you don't care. That's not loyalty. That's a moral compass. And you're damn sure not a liberal for asking about it. I think for you to move past it, you're a damn liberal, is what I think. You want to just bypass it, forget about it, the child predators, means you're complicit with it. The Epstein case proves one thing beyond debate, guys. There is a level of power where crime stop being prosecuted and start being managed. And the moment any movement, left or right, refuses to confront that truth, it stops being a movement. It becomes a shield. You have to ask yourself right now, what side are you standing on? Good or evil pretending to be good? Which one are you on? And just because of this, because it's all of them, There is no left or right. That is the bullshit they told us to believe. So we say distracted. So they keep bringing BlackRock into the White House. They keep putting these predators into various offices. They have our country embedded by agents from other countries, and they're running it. They're sending all our tax money to overseas. The tariff tax, the so on. You got your Doge check yet? Your tariff check yet? You got that Venezuela oil check yet? You're not getting anything. But you know who are? They are. They feed you little bites. I've seen everybody cheering when Alex Preddy was popped the other day, like something happened. Whenever ICE was out there fighting rioters instead of actually going after the criminal illegal aliens, which that's what they're supposed to be doing. Now they're fighting and spraying pepper spray into the leftist eyes, and people are like, yeah, they're getting it up. That's not their job. Their job is to go, and they're like, they're impeding. No, they went there line for line. I saw it myself, wasting time, but to give you just enough popcorn to keep you cheering. Oh, we're getting it done. You cheer for that. I want to take down the deep state, the people running this country that are evil, sick, disgusting individuals. And it's both of them. It's Democrats and Republicans. That's why I made this shirt. Dare, Democrats and Republicans, Epstein. Go grab one. Just put them in the store right now. Let everybody know where you stand at. Anyway, guys, this is Black Scout Survival. Stay frosty, stay strapped, stay dangerous. Black Scout out.